Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Caleb Avery, CEO and founder of Tilled, with a revolutionary PayFac-as-a-Service approach allows their customers to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a fully registered payment facilitator or PayFac without any of the upfront investment or ongoing overheads. Caleb, I'm so excited to chat with you and discuss not only your experience in the payment space and what that means in regards to how it affects startups but also just as a founder and the experiences that you've had scaling and building, not only Tilt, but other companies prior to that. And so really excited to get into the weaves of kind of how you view companies and building and also product market fit and all these processes that are extremely necessary to building a company or building something that people actually want to use. Because I think we all have great ideas, but sometimes, the execution of that, I think is where a lot of the creativity comes from. But before we get into all that good stuff, what were you doing before you started Tilt?
Yeah, well, appreciate you having me on the show today. Prior to Till, my entire background has really been in the payment space. So I started at 19 years old, going door to door, selling payment processing services to small business owners. Scaled that up over time, and then I started consulting for software companies. And so I consulted for a fair number of software businesses over the last kind of 5, 6 years. And for me, I continue to see these same problems over and over again, where these vertical software businesses really wanted to figure out how to monetize all of these payments that were flowing through their platform, but they just didn't like the options that were available to them, whether it was the
Mm-hmm.
economics at Stripe or the technology available through some of the other
Mm-hmm.
providers. And so eventually felt like there was an opportunity to go build out, a new business that became Till.
It's fascinating, just the founder stories, and you're not the first founder that's gone door to door and really kind of cut their teeth into learning about. I think, well, I guess question for you is what did you learn in that process, and what in that journey of uncovering what customers want helps or has continued to help you now, not only with Tilt but also with consulting other companies. How do you go through identifying what customer needs are? What are the questions are you asking? And what's the process behind, getting to know that and how do you find solutions around what their problems are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, door to door sales is kind of jumping right into the deep end there at 19, and so it teaches you a lot about people, about the needs of the merchants, about the payment space, but you also learn a lot about rejection.
Yeah.
The reality of going door to door selling merchant services. You might walk into 20, 25 businesses, and 20 of those businesses are angry that you're walking in the door. And so, you learn to kind of build up that thick skin and understand that like it's okay to get a no. You actually want to push, towards that no. And I feel like, when that transitions into kind of my role, founder, CEO here at Till, I'm doing sales, I'm doing fundraising, I'm doing recruiting, and there's a ton of rejection, that happens, throughout that process. This calendar year alone, we just did the numbers. I took 563 investor meetings, and the number of investors that passed is pretty insane. And so it's just a ton of rejection, but you have to look at that as just a healthy part of the process and be able to understand that it's not personal, and that's just a natural part of the process.
Yeah. For founders out there kind of going through a similar fundraising process, so I feel like it never stops for companies. Once, yeah, once you raise once and you kind of continue that and as you grow and scale, but, through those conversations that you're having, for the founders out there in the process now, what are the elements that, that are important when you're talking with companies? Is it timing? Is it the pitch? Is it finding out exactly how the relationship will match? I'm sure some of those no's came from your end as well, because it's extremely important to work with the right partners. But what are the elements that are important that you've seen, now having done it a few times and more than a few times?
Yeah, I've raised several rounds of funding here at Till, and I've also invested in about 25 startups myself, and so I've kind of seen it from both sides of the table. And there's some things with fundraising that are kind of consistent throughout the journey at different stages, but there are also some things that are more unique to earlier stage and then later stage. Fundraising, where when you're in the earlier stages, and I see founders make this mistake a lot, where they really underestimate how much the investors are indexing on you, the founder.
Yeah.
And so if you're not helping the investors understand who you are, your background, and why you're excited to build, the business that you're building, it's going to be very difficult to get investment in that early days when you've got a pitch deck, maybe a website, maybe an ugly, MVP version of the product, but they're really betting on you and the team and the vision, that you have for the organization. And so what that leads to is this idea of storytelling. And so, in the early days, it's really this idea of selling the vision for where you want to go, with the business. And then over time, as you actually have traction and data and numbers, to share, it's how you weave, that data into the story that you're telling. But really, to me, fundraising is really all about, that vision and that story that you're able to tell, and then start backing that up with hard data as you scale.
Yeah. What's your process like now for fundraising? Do you have a list and do you kind of foster that list of investors and look for new connections? Is that kind of how the process starts and initiates, and then you kind of trickle down conversations from there?
We frankly have been pretty fortunate that we've had just a tremendous amount of inbound interest from investors. And so for me, maybe unusually, a big part of my process is actually just sharing updates on LinkedIn, where a lot of investors are just following along with the journey and how we're growing and how we're building, and sometimes the struggles that we're facing. And so that's been a big part of it. And then just setting regular communication cadences. So every quarter or two, catching up with the investors that you're excited about and that you want to build that relationship with. Where you mentioned it earlier, fundraising is this continual process. And I think if you're a founder and you're thinking like, hey, I'm not going to talk to investors for the next 9 to 12 months, and then when I need to go raise money, I'm just going to go out, and raise it in 3 months. Maybe last year, you could do that. Whereas now it really is about building, that relationship and having those regular touch points to, build that connection with those investors, because it's really a two-way vetting process. Like, certainly, you want investors to be excited about investing in your business. But at least for me, I've really prioritized looking for investors that, are a culture fit for me and for Tild, and are excited about, the mission and the vision, behind the organization. And so for me, that aspect of relationship building over sometimes a long period of time is just an incredibly valuable part of the process.
Well, what's something that you do regularly? I know one founder mentioned that they'll continue to like send newsletter updates, and they continue to kind of keep that investment community, informed with the progress. Is that something that you incorporate, and what can founders do better to keep their investor pool, I guess, up to date is a good word for it?
I mean, certainly investor updates. I mean, if you're not sending investor updates to your current investors, that's a huge missed opportunity to stay, top of mind with current investors. But it can also be, a great opportunity to keep, other potential investors, up to date on what you're doing. I tend to prefer just regular catch up calls with folks. And then really, when I'm going to conferences, reaching out and seeing, what investors are going to be attending, those conferences. And for me, at least, Money 2020 has really been, the kind of mecca where, almost every, VC out there is going to Money 2020. And so I line up, 3 or 4 days of all day meetings to try and build that in-person relationship. Because as nice as Zoom is, as nice as, a newsletter update is, getting to spend that time in person is just incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Describe the not only the technology behind Tild, but also the problem that you're passionate about solving, and that it is so prevalent within what you've seen with a lot of companies in the payment space.
So the big problem that we're solving for is this idea that the vertical software platforms want to be able to monetize the payments going through their platform. And so I saw this as a consultant where I was working with, dental software platforms, golf course management platforms, and they were tired of just passing along the 2.9% and 30 cents from Stripe or Braintree onto their customers. And they really wanted to get into that revenue stream and start earning revenue off of all of the payments that were flowing through their platform. And, originally I was connecting them to legacy gateways like an NMI or an authorize.net, and then helping them negotiate referral agreements with the big processors. And that legacy technology, coupled with this manual PDF merchant onboarding process, was not the clean experience that these software companies, were looking for. And so one of my clients really got enamored by this idea of becoming a PayFac. But they actually knew nothing about what it meant to be a PayFac. And historically, that was like a 2-year multi-million-dollar process. And so the core idea behind Tilled and PayFac-as-a-Service is that we took that 2-year multi-million-dollar process, and now we've had a company launch in as little as 4 days on our platform.
Wow.
And so they're able to take advantage of all of those benefits of the payment facilitator model, but they can get up and running in a matter of weeks without building out a team, without taking on liability, but we're still paying them the lion's share of the revenue on all of the transactions flowing through their platform.
Incredible. So essentially, describe the mechanics behind it. So a company uses the technology to become a payment facilitator. What's involved in that? And also, how are they helping, or excuse me, how are they using and that income to monetize? When you say monetize, I feel like most people think about, launching products or finding different revenue streams. How are you incorporating this technology to help them monetize on payments?
Yeah, so two quick things there. One, just a nuance that our partners, our software platforms are not becoming registered PayFacs. That's why we're able to get them up and running in 4 days, 2-3 weeks, instead of 12, 24 months. And so that's just an important distinction in terms of how they're able to leverage the platform. We really view ourselves as this turnkey white labeled payments infrastructure, and so they're integrating into the API, and then they're able to leverage a lot of our turnkey white label tools. And so they've got white label merchant onboarding tools, they've got white label reporting portals, and how they actually monetize the payments. So if we take, that golf course management platform that, let's say, has 500 golf courses on their platform. Previously, if they're working with Stripe, they were just passing along the 2.9% and 30 cents from Stripe onto the golf course, and there was no margin opportunity for the software platform itself. But the reality is it typically only costs like 2.2% to actually process those transactions. And so normally there's about 80 basis points or, almost 1% of margin available for the transactions that are being processed. And at Tilled, we share at least 66% of that revenue back to our software partners. And so the majority of our software companies are making more than 0.5% of margin on every dollar that's processed through their platform, which can turn into a pretty incredible revenue stream very quickly, where some of our partners are more than doubling their margins by embedding payments and partnering with Tilled.
It's incredible to see how, technology it helps not only, facilitate more quick and efficient processes, but also benefit a lot of customers. And I feel like a lot of that is also when you're disrupting an incumbent, which it sounds like, Tilled is definitely a company that's doing that. What in terms of the education you have to involve with your customers and your partners, how much do you kind of focus on education, describing the problem and describing how your solution kind of is using, kind of not a legacy system, but a system that's been around for a while, but then kind of switching, the ability to actually monetize. How much time do you spend on like educating your customers and your partners?
It's just an absolute core focus for us, here at Tilled. And so, one, we take a consultative selling approach, and then two, our marketing strategy is really content marketing approach. And so when it comes to the content marketing strategy, kind of how we get people in the door, we spend a ton of time developing thought leadership content, be it blogs, long form content pieces, podcasts like this. And for us, what we're finding is that consistently our customers, before they ever actually get in touch with our sales teams, have actually done quite a bit of research on Tilled, on our competitors, on the space in general. And so for us, we spend a lot of time thinking about the messaging, the positioning, kind of where we fit into the ecosystem, what our competitive differentiators are, what are the unique aspects about Tilled that make us hyper competitive in this market. And so for us, that content marketing strategy is just an absolutely fundamental part of our strategy. And I think in the B2B segment, more and more companies should really think about that content marketing strategy as a way to get more educated inbound leads coming in. And then that consultative selling approach, once the customers actually come and inbound to us, we're not really selling them. We're trying to figure out like, what problems are you facing in your business, and is Tilled actually really the right person to solve that problem for you? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no, but we're really trying to get a deep understanding of the problems, that our potential partners are facing, and then really figure out if we're the right solution for them. And if
Yeah.
not, point them in the right direction, but provide value and provide education, all the way through that journey.
Yeah. What are some things that haven't worked with content marketing? And then what's been kind of a core focus? Is it volume? Is it specialized information? Is it all the above? But curious on what hasn't worked and kind of what the focus has been.
Yeah. What hasn't worked with content marketing? I think one of the things that we realized pretty early on, that was surprising, was how much more impact my personal LinkedIn was able to get versus like the
Yeah.
Tilled company page.
Yeah.
And that just was something that wasn't, immediately intuitive, to us. But I mean, we've been building up, both of those pages, and kind of relatively speaking, I've got, 12,000 plus, connections, until the company has like 3,000 plus connections. So just the pace of growth has been pretty dramatically, different. And I don't know what the LinkedIn algorithm's doing, prioritizing kind of personal, content over corporate content. But at least for us, that's kind of what we're, consistently seeing. And then, what's really worked for us, I think for me personally, alongside kind of the thought leadership content and the blogs and the podcast and kind of the heavy hitting, nerdy payments content, I think people also appreciate kind of getting to know me, as a person. I really would highly recommend that more founders think about building up that personal brand for them, because it pays tremendous dividends, both, for the company that you're building now, companies that you may build,
Yeah.
in the future. And it's also just for me, it's been a great habit to just get, into this habit of, building out in public and kind of sharing, sharing the wins, sharing the losses, sharing the struggles, out there in public. And it's just been a fun, experience for me, just sharing the journey of building Till, over the last couple of years, and kind of having people
Yeah.
follow along online.
Yeah. Yeah. As a founder, I'm someone that overthinks a lot of the content that I'm pushing out, or questions that I'm asking, and things like that. But where would you start if I was a founder? Say, okay, I'm going to focus on my personal brand. Do I talk about the space I'm working in? Do I talk about my personal journey? Do I discuss mentors I've spoken with? What in particular has been helpful for you to focus on? I'm sure you've gone through a few different iterations on content and pushing stuff out, but what's been helpful as a founder, or what advice would you give another founder who wants to reinvest in their personal brand?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the reality is that the hardest part is getting started.
Yes.
And for me, it was the same way. When I was first starting to think about engaging on LinkedIn, like, it wasn't comfortable, it wasn't natural, it wasn't really kind of how, I really, wanted to operate. But I was seeing a lot of other, founders and companies that were finding, success. And at that point, it was early on in COVID, and I was like, what do I have to lose? We're kind of struggling to get the word out there any other way. Conferences are shut down. You can't go meet people in person. Let's try this LinkedIn thing. And for me, it started out very slow, started out very gradual. And I started initially just by engaging with other people's content. So it wasn't like, day one, I'm putting out these amazing posts and recording podcasts. Like, that was not in any way kind of even really the first, 9-12 months of, me putting myself out there on LinkedIn. It started with engaging with other people's content, leaving thoughtful comments, or resharing, posts or articles that I thought that were interesting, with a little bit, of my own, thoughts. And then I hired a ghostwriter. And for me, that was just the best decision, that I could have made, because I'm not great at sitting down and cranking out a paper. I struggle with it in school. I struggle with it, today. And I just recognized that weakness. And so I brought in a ghostwriter to help write, more of that
Yeah.
content for me, so that, I could do kind of the part that I wanted, which was just kind of talk about topics that were interesting, to me. And then she could actually turn that into an organized blog that was worth, people taking the time to read. And so that was kind of where we started, putting out
Yeah.
content. And as you said, it kind of evolved over time, and we started to learn, what worked, what didn't work, what did people really enjoy, hearing more of, and just learning and iterating over time. But it started slow, and then it builds.
Yeah. Yeah. What other platforms do you use in terms of content distribution? Are you using like TikTok, Instagram, or are you on other things, or is it mainly LinkedIn?
I'm a LinkedIn guy through and through. Our content team set me up a a Twitter, and I've yet to personally
Oh
put
yeah.
out a tweet on there. They're occasionally putting stuff out there for me, but I've just never been a big social media guy. I haven't been on Facebook in probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years at this point. And LinkedIn's really the place that I, spend my time. I also feel like it's where our customers and our partners, are
Yeah.
hanging out. At least for us, we're in a B2B setting. And so I personally don't feel like TikTok and, Instagram are necessarily the right place for us to go find, our audience. But it doesn't mean for other people, they can't find a ton of success on other platforms.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the traction. Obviously, Tilt has been, around for quite a bit now. I think 4 or 5 years. What's exciting about the more recent success and the traction that we talked a little bit about earlier before the show about,
Yeah.
for some reason this was a booming month for you, which is fantastic. What has been the attribution, or what has been, I guess, the reason for the success, and what are you excited about coming in the next year?
Yeah, so we started building this out in January of 2019, so kind of almost 4 years into the journey, at this point. But the reality is it's just this incredibly slow ramp, and then it starts to take off, which is exciting. And I feel like we're kind of right at that inflection point in the business, which is super exciting. And so, as you mentioned, we've seen a ton of success here in the first couple weeks of December, which I never would have predicted. I feel like generally December is just such a slow time in the payment space. But, at this point, Tilt has 68 software companies that we partner with. But we've signed 10 in the last 2 weeks, which is just absolutely nuts. And for me, when I look at kind of the reasons why we're seeing, that acceleration of the traction on the platform. To me, I think about this idea of concept market fit versus product market
Mm,
fit. And I feel like for the longest time, we've really had tremendous concept market fit where companies and customers are incredibly excited about the idea of PayFac-as-a-Service, the idea of our business model, the idea of the product. And I feel like where we're starting to go is seeing this just incredible inflection in the business where we're really transitioning into that true product market fit where, the companies on the platform are happy. They're starting to refer, other people to us. Word of mouth is getting out. The inbound is ramping up. We're signing
yeah.
referral partners every other day. And so we're just seeing this acceleration happening. And I think some of it is, Tilt the brand getting more mature. Some of it's Tilt the product, getting more mature and just ready to handle, more use cases. But I also feel like a lot of this is kind of the macroeconomic environment is really shifting in our favor.
Yeah.
And for me, when I look kind of high level, last year when capital was darn near free and it was growth at all costs, software companies were focused on just acquiring as many customers as they could. They weren't really looking at margins. They weren't really looking at profitability. They didn't really care quite as much about adding additional revenue streams. Some did, but it wasn't the core focus
Yeah.
for the majority of companies. Whereas now, we're kind of deep into, the funding freeze where it's just tough to come by,
Yeah.
new venture funding. And I don't know that next year is going to be all that much better. And so you're seeing more and more investors and boards and management teams that are looking at their kind of projections for next year. And they have to figure out how to improve their margins. They have to figure out how to add additional revenue streams into the business and get their MRR up so that they can raise, that next round of capital. And I really believe that Tilt and our, payment monetization angle can be an incredibly lucrative and beneficial path for these software companies to take. And I think we're starting
Yeah.
to see that in our traction over the last few months.
Incredible. And so exciting, how I'm excited by the idea of companies just building smarter and really focusing on what is going to lead them to long-term success, and not as a fluff term, but mainly just making intelligent decisions, knowing where their spend is, knowing more about what it takes, their CAC, in acquiring customers. It's exciting to see, I think, founders become, I don't want to say more refined, but it's almost hyper focused on building a really holistic business and business model, which is, I think more and more, appreciated by the success of a lot of smaller companies and not only now, but in the future. What are some of the biggest risks that Tilt face today?
Yeah. So, I look at kind of some of the risks that we've seen over the course of the year. I mean, I think for us, fast growth. When you talk about problems, there's good
Yeah.
problems, and there's bad problems, but they're problems nonetheless. And I think for us, as the year started, we were seeing just frankly more inbound interest than we were really set up to handle from a staffing perspective, from a process perspective, from a product perspective. And so we really spent the first half of this year focused on refining our processes, building out the team, and making sure that, the product and the infrastructure that we had in place was really going to be able to scale, with the customers, at the pace that we were signing up, new clients. And so for us, that was a big worry, kind of first
Yeah.
half of this year. And we've been able to work through, that one. I also feel like for us, we've seen, a ton of benefit of being a remote first organization, but there's times where you go through, these challenging periods. And for me, the challenges have been more kind of on the cultural side of things where, it's a lot easier to build up, camaraderie when you're in the office, when you're, high-fiving, you're all, together in person. Whereas for us, we started 2021 with 5 people on the team, and we've got something like 63 people on the team,
Wow.
today. And so that's just an incredible, pace of growth, but trying to maintain, the culture that we want in the organization, building remote first and growing at that sort of pace is a big challenge.
Yeah. What are some ways that you kind of continue to foster culture and some one thing we do as a company is have stand-ups, and we kind of always reinvest in our values and having conversations around what that means. Obviously, it's hard to meet up in person, yeah, as a fully dispersed team. But what are some cool and creative and fun ways that you continue to engage and foster the culture of Tild?
Yeah, I feel like whenever you're building in a remote first environment, especially as the team scales, you just have to be more intentional about, how do you want to build the culture? What is the culture, that you want to build? And for
Yeah,
us, it starts with the mission, the vision, the values of the organization, just continuing
yeah,
to reinforce those every all hands, every time, we all get together, employee onboarding, and just really enforcing, that mission, the vision, the values, of the organization. I think for us as well, we're doing, at least on a monthly basis, getting the entire team together on Zoom, sometimes more frequently for happy hours. We've got a fun committee that organizes, some cool events. And so, even though we're remote, it doesn't mean that we can't all have fun, together. And so just trying to have, that fun, side of building a business, because there's always going to be stress, but it also should be fun. And then we recently actually did get the entire company together, in person here in Colorado, which was just an absolutely phenomenal, experience. And it's certainly cost prohibitive, so you can't do it, all the time, can't do it every week. But as much as you're able to, I just highly recommend getting as much of the team together, as you can in person, because you just can't beat that in-person collaboration and that in-person relationship building.
yeah, yeah. It's awesome to see companies focusing on reinvesting in the culture, and I think it creates kind of this long term success. And once everyone's aligned, and you can kind of reinvigorate the motivation in times where things maybe seem a little bit, I don't want to say bleak, but more challenging than others. If everything goes well, what's the long term vision for Tild?
Yeah. So for me, I always tie it back to the mission. And so for us, our mission is to empower, ISVs to monetize their payments. But the second part of that mission statement, is changing the payments landscape for the better. And so for me, if we're successful over the long term, we will have a meaningful impact on the payment space, changing that for the better. And for me, it's really about the ethos of how we approach, our relationships with, our employees, our partners, their customers, investors, just really, doing right, by as many stakeholders as we can. And it's not kind of, growth at all costs. Tild must, succeed. It's really looking at kind of how can we all win, together, which is unfortunately not the prevalent, approach by, a lot of the companies, in our space.
Yeah. If you weren't working on Tild, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't working on Tild, what would I be doing? I mean, prior to this, I was really enjoying the consulting work, that I was doing, getting to invest in startups, and it's certainly a lot less stress, when it's not, your business, on the line, your employees, your payroll, to make. And so I could certainly see, a world where I was, continuing to help, software companies and continuing to invest in startups and just getting to follow, other founders in their journey and help, however I could.
I love that. I love that. What's particularly hard about your job?
I feel like for me, one of the hardest things over the course of this year has been working on this transition from being, a founder to really transitioning into a CEO role where, the organization scaled tremendously, or customer base has scaled, tremendously. We've raised, quite a bit of capital. And for me, the job and the responsibilities that are required of me today versus what was required for me 12, 18, 24 months ago looks, pretty different. And so for me, it's really challenging myself to have the personal growth, to be able to meet the demands of what Tild actually needs from me, as the business scales.
Yeah. It's been, I think we can go through so many different rabbit holes, and I'm excited to not only, learn about your experience and your background, how you view building and this inflection point. It's exciting to see where Tild is going to go. And I always like to ask this next question, not from a company perspective, but from a founder perspective. Whether it's early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
I recently was rereading Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. And for me, that just, I feel like is, a book that I just continue to go back to. And it's this idea that if you really want to build something, transformational, you can't just have kind of a miter iteration on an existing model or an existing business. You really have to focus on building something, entirely new. And I think for me, we took that to heart. I mean, the idea of PayFac-as-a-Service is a concept that did not exist before, we invented it. So to me, the idea that we came in and created a category is something that's, incredibly exciting. There's now, a number of competitors that have kind of slapped that on the side of their bus. And so PayFac-as-a-Service means different things, to different people. But I take a lot of pride in the fact that it was really, our idea, and we really created the category, that we're now leading.
Amazing. Well, I know we're at the end of the show here, Caleb, and like I said, we can go through so many different rabbit holes, and we might have to do a second episode just to incorporate more of not only your experience, but your thoughts and how you view building. But I always like to give our founders a chance and our guests a chance to give us your plugs. So tell us where we can find you, where we can support the product, and if I'm a potential customer, where I can get involved. What are your websites, LinkedIn? Since Twitter's not that active, maybe we'll leave that one out, but where can we find you and be a part of it?
Yeah. So if you want to follow me personally, Caleb Avery, LinkedIn is certainly a fantastic place to go. Tild, the company is also very active on LinkedIn. Our website is just a fantastic resource. Check out the blog page. Tild is TILLED. So check out tild.com if you want to learn more and reach out if you're interested in monetizing your payments or being a referral partner to help other software companies. But Julian, really appreciate you having me on the podcast today. Awesome experience. And if we want to do round 2, I'm totally game.
I love that. Well, I hope you enjoyed yourself, and thank you again for being on the show.
Appreciate it.